Okay, well, we're finished summarizing the article, and now we're going to move into analyzing the article. We're going to go back and read it again, but this time we're going to look for things that the author is doing. And the things that we'll be looking for are the things that we talked about in the features of literary nonfiction. We're going to be looking for use of figurative language. We're going to be looking for really strong diction, like really meaningful L2 words, and we're going to be looking for imagery and that kind of thing. So join me as we analyze the Brooklyn Bridge story. Now that we've summarized the article, we're going to look not just at what the author is saying, but we're also going to analyze how the author is using words to make the writing more meaningful. The first thing I want to point out to you, I've highlighted some things and we're going to go over them. The first thing I want to point out is that the author is capitalizing the words "the bridge," and normally you would only capitalize proper nouns, right? We remember that from all of those writing classes we've been taking since we were in kindergarten. But you would capitalize the Brooklyn Bridge because it's a proper noun. It's the actual title of the bridge. But if we're just talking about the bridge, we normally would not capitalize those words. So the fact that the author has capitalized it all the way through the piece is, I don't think it's an editing error. I think the author has capitalized it because he's trying to show how important the bridge is to not just him, but other people as well. So he's actually breaking a grammar rule on purpose to create that extra layer of meaning about how important the bridge is to him. Another thing he does is use words, his diction, and phrases to give a positive connotation really to the bridge. And he says right here, the stone towers rising below us from the foreshortened streets. Now, I actually had to Google what foreshortened meant. I didn't know what it meant. But it turns out that and I'll show you a picture. Foreshortened, this is an example of foreshortening. So something is so big in the background that it makes everything else kind of look smaller. But you see how the street down here is smaller than it is close to you? That's called foreshortening. And so this is actually a picture of the Brooklyn Bridge, and that might be something like the author would have seen as he was looking at it from where he lived. But you can see how huge it looks in comparison to the cars, and what a huge presence it would have been for anybody living so close. So I wanted to share that picture with you. But he talks about the foreshortened streets and how big it is. Just, it's visually present all the time. And he says it's part of the signature of the place where we lived. It's just, so he uses that phrase to illustrate the importance of the bridge in his life. And he also talks about the glorious walk to go see it. And then he says they walked for miles, going by factories and warehouses and strange neighborhoods. So it's not necessarily a pleasant walk in the sense that, he's not going by a bunch of beautiful things to look at. It's not glorious because of the walk. It's glorious because of the destination, because they're sweating and it's gross and their legs hurt. But then once we get to the bridge, we get back to these positive words: amazing, looming. It's just huge and right there in front of them, and it's the bridge. So when we're talking about what authors are doing, that is an example, and I've written it out for you in the right hand column, and you feel free to write the same thing on your paper. The author stresses how important the bridge in his life by capitalizing the words "the bridge" as if it were a proper noun. He also chooses words and phrases that signify the size and importance of the bridge. So everything works together to create that meaning of how important the bridge is. And it continues into the next paragraph. He says, "It was the first man-made thing I knew was beautiful." So this is something beautiful to him. That's really powerful diction. And he talks about the great arc of the cables, that great word. And then he also says that it provided a sense of awe that was quite religious. He's associating the bridge with something as important in life as a church, with a religious experience. That's huge. And he uses the word awe again. And then he describes all the people coming from other places to America, and that they see the Statue of Liberty, the skyline, and the bridge together. And that is another association that shows us just how important the author feels that the bridge is, because I think if you've watched enough TV or even taken social studies for a long enough time, you see again and again the image of the immigrants coming into America, into the harbor, and seeing the Statue of Liberty. And the author is equating the Brooklyn Bridge as being as important to people as the Statue of Liberty. And that's a really big deal. The Statue of Liberty is one of America's most important national symbols, and the author of this piece, by associating the bridge with the Statue of Liberty, says that it's as important too. So I wrote essentially that in the right-hand column. The author uses words associated with, let's say with positive, how about with greatness? The author uses words associated with greatness to again highlight the significance of the bridge in his life. And he uses the example of the immigrant seeing the bridge alongside the Statue of Liberty to show how important it is to others as well. Okay, Mrs. Leach, why don't you just type it all the way before we start the video? That's okay. See, teachers make mistakes too. Okay, so here's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you go back into Schoology, and I am going to put a quiz in there, and I'm going to have you go through and analyze the rest of the paragraphs yourself. But instead of just having to guess what the things are that the author is doing, I'm going to give you these hints. One, you can go back to the video about literary characteristics, because a lot of the things that this author did are the things we talked about in that video, as far as using imagery or diction or sensory language or whatever, figurative language to create meaning. But so it's going to be multiple choice, so that way you're not just coming up with it on your own. You'll be able to look at the multiple choice questions and then choose one of those, and you can write it in the right hand side as your answer and turn it into your teacher if that's what your teacher wants, or you can submit the quiz in Schoology if that's what your teacher wants. But you'll have to check with your teacher to find out what the right thing is. I hope you have enjoyed looking at this article with me, and we will go on to the next thing once you're done with your quiz. Happy reading!